Okay, let's unpack this. Disney drops, what, $4 billion on Star Wars? And the internet, well, it basically declared the apocalypse.
Oh, I remember that. The reactions were intense.
Totally. I saw comments like, looks like it's time for the human race to end. Seriously.
Wow.
But then fast forward, The Force Awakens makes billions, The Mandalorian is everywhere.
Huge successes.
And here's where it gets really interesting for us. That whole saga, the skepticism versus the payoff, it perfectly illustrates the high-stakes world of corporate strategy, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Those massive decisions can reshape industries or just fizzle out.
It really highlights the uncertainty in selecting these corporate-level strategies.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today for our short takes on strategy.
Great.
We're pulling out the key ideas from Chapter 8 of Ketchen and Short's Mastering Strategic Management, the 4th edition.
Focusing specifically on how companies decide, which industries to actually compete in.
Exactly. Ever wonder why some companies just, stick to their knitting, really focused?
Yeah, laser focused.
While others seem to be into everything.
A million different businesses, yeah. That's our mission today. Try and bring some clarity.
We'll cover concentrating on one industry, expanding out even, shrinking.
Using the frameworks and examples from the chapter, like Disney, to help you, the listener, understand what's going on under the hood.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, understanding these strategies gives you a really valuable lens.
How so?
Well, it explains why, say, your local bookstore might start hosting author events. That's market penetration, trying to get existing customers in more often.
Oh, okay.
Or why your favorite clothing brand suddenly launches, I don't know, home goods. That could be product development, or maybe even related diversification.
Gotcha. All right, so let's kick things off with that first idea. Companies really doubling down on what they already do well.
Right, the chapter calls these concentration strategies.
Competing hard within just one industry. Makes sense, right? Focus your resources.
Be the best at one thing. And apparently, there are 3 main ways to do this.
Okay, what's the first?
The first is market penetration. Think of it as fighting for a bigger slice of the current pie.
Same products, same customers, just more.
Exactly. Getting current customers to buy more or winning customers from rivals.
Like Nike constantly signing new athletes. Keeps them top of mind for people buying beer.
Perfect example. Or McDonald's running, very specific local ad campaigns.
Yeah, aimed at certain groups. I even read about this quirky one. Sheetz brand energy strips.
Yeah.
They partnered with Budget, Rent a Car, to put ads on car wraps, literally driving their message to more potential buyers in their market.
Huh. That's creative penetration. Shows the lengths companies go to. Okay, second strategy, market development.
So this is taking what you already sell.
Your existing products, yeah.
And finding new customers for it, new places.
Precisely. New customer segments, new geographic areas, new retail channels.
Okay, like Starbucks selling beans in grocery stores.
Uh-huh.
Reaching people who maybe don't hit the cafe.
Classic case. Or Tasty Cake, the snack cakes.
Love Tasty Cake.
Yeah.
Mostly an East Coast thing, right?
Traditionally, yeah. But when Flowers Foods bought them, they pushed Tasty Cakes into the Southeast. Whole new market.
Smart. Taking a known product somewhere new.
And sometimes it gets really novel, like American Rounds putting ammo vending machines in grocery stores.
Whoa, really? Vending machines for ammo?
Yeah, using tech to verify IDs and all that.
Yeah.
Reaching customers where they already are. But market development isn't always a home run.
No.
Remember McDonald's McTrain in Germany?
Yeah. The restaurant car on the train. Sounded fun.
But apparently a logistical nightmare. Didn't quite work out. Shows the risks.
Right. Even big guys stumble. Okay, so that brings us to the third type, product development.
This is where you stick with your current market, your existing customers.
But you create new stuff for them.
Exactly. New products, new services. Think Disney moving from mostly cartoons way back when to live-action streaming theme parks, constantly developing new offerings for their audience.
Or McDonald's adding salads and healthier options, trying to keep up with changing tastes.
Or Starbucks VIA instant coffee for people who wanted Starbucks quick, on the go.
And sometimes it's just weird, right? For buzz, like Jones Soda's holiday flavors.
Oh, the Thanksgiving ones. Turkey and gravy soda.
Yes. And Christmas ham. Did anyone actually drink those?
Debatable. But it got people talking, didn't it? Raised awareness for their normal sodas.
True. But there's a risk there too, right? Stretching the brand too thin.
Absolutely. The chapter mentions an analyst being skeptical when Olive Garden considered adding hamburgers.
At Olive Garden?
Yeah, to attract younger folks. But the worry was brand confusion. People go there for Italian, for the breadsticks.
Exactly. Not burgers.
Yeah.
Okay, so beyond growing within your lane, there's horizontal integration,
Right. This is growing by acquiring or merging with your rivals.
buying the competition. What's the difference again? Acquisition versus merger.
Generally, an acquisition is one company, usually bigger, buying another, like Disney buying Pixar. A merger is more like two companies, often similar in size, joining forces to become one new entity. Think of how Bank of America was formed through lots of mergers.
Okay, so why do this? Just to get bigger.
Size and scale are a big part. It can lower costs big time. Think about those oil company mergers. BP and Amoco, Exxon and Mobil.
Right, economies of scale, cutting redundancies.
Exactly. It can also be about getting your hands on valuable stuff, resources, brands, patents, flowers. Foods getting Tasty Cake is one example.
Or Stanley Black & Decker buying Craftsman from Sears. That's a huge brand.
Definitely. Utz buying the On the Border chip brand is another recent one. Sometimes it's about grabbing market share quickly.
Like Southwest buying AirTran to get bigger in Atlanta.
Perfect example. Or 7 on I Holdings, the 7-Eleven parent, buying Speedway gas stations. Massive expansion.
Or even new ways to reach customers, right? Like the UFC buying Strikeforce.
Precisely. Strikeforce had network TV deals that UFC wanted access to.
But here's the kicker, the chapter highlights. These things fail a lot, don't they?
Shockingly often. Studies suggest over 60% of mergers and acquisitions actually erode shareholder wealth.
60%. That's huge.
And maybe 30–45% get undone later.
Why? What goes wrong?
Oh, lots of things. Clashing company cultures is a big one. Hard to integrate.
I bet.
Sometimes the buyer just pays way too much, makes it almost impossible to get a return.
Any infamous examples?
The chapter mentions Mattel buying the learning company for billions, then selling it for practically nothing later.
Ouch.
Or the Daimler-Benz merger with Chrysler? Hyped up big time, but ultimately a financial disappointment.
So horizontal integration looks tempting, but it's a real high-stakes gamble.
Definitely fraught with risk.
Okay, so sticking to your lane has limits. Buying rivals is risky. What's another major direction?
That brings us to vertical integration.
Okay.
This is when a company gets involved in new parts of its own value chain, taking on activities that its suppliers or its customers used to do.
So moving up or down the chain. Like if you're a retailer, maybe you start making your own products.
Exactly. That would be a backward vertical integration moving upstream towards the raw materials or inputs.
Like Ford, way back, creating subsidiaries to make its own rubber, glass, metal.
Classic example, controlling the inputs. More recently, Delta Airlines bought an oil refinery.
An airline bought a refinery.
Wow. To control fuel costs?
That was the idea, yeah. Control the volatile jet fuel prices. Even ESPN creating ESPN films.
To make their own documentaries.
Right. Instead of just buying them, they integrated backward into production.
Makes sense. Secure your supply, maybe cut costs. What about the other way, moving towards the customer?
That's forward vertical integration, moving downstream, closer to the end user.
Like Disney having its own retail stores, selling merch directly.
Perfect example. They capture more profit, control the brand experience, or think about Amazon building its own delivery network.
Right, the drones, leasing planes, instead of just relying on UPS or FedEx.
That's a massive forward integration push into logistics.
I remember reading Ford used to own Hertz rental cars. They did. Bought it, then later sold it. The idea was a built-in buyer for their cars.
And eBay buying PayPal.
Yeah.
Though they spun that off later too.
And Apple opening its own retail stores was a huge forward integration move.
Totally changed how people bought computers, right?
Yeah.
Control the whole experience.
Definitely. And it's not just huge companies. The book mentions Bill Shev.
The goat cheese place in Alabama.
Yeah. They opened their own little shop and cafe, selling directly, building the brand. Forward integration on a smaller scale.
Cool. Okay, so we've got staying focused, moving up or down the chain. What about just jumping into totally different businesses?
Now we're talking diversification strategies, entering completely new industries.
And this is different from vertical integration. How?
Vertical integration is about different parts of your existing value chain. Diversification is about entering entirely new value chains.
Got it. So a car company buying a coffee chain, that's diversification.
Exactly. And the chapter says any diversification move should pass 3 key tests.
Okay, lay them on me.
First, the attractiveness test. Is the new industry actually, profitable? Good structure?
Makes sense. Don't jump into a bad business.
Second, The cost of entry test. Can you get in without paying so much it kills the potential profit?
Don't overpay.
Right. The book mentions Philip Morris buying 7UP. They arguably paid too much, which hurt its chances from the start.
Ouch. Okay, what's test number 3?
The better off test. This is crucial.
Yeah.
Will the company and the new business be better together than they were apart? Is there synergy?
Synergy. The magic word.
Right. Does 1 + 1 equal more than 2? Again, the Philip Morris 7UP example. Not much synergy between cigarettes and soda. Didn't really pass that test either.
So just jumping into random industries isn't smart. Now, the chapter talks about different types of diversification, right? Starting with related diversification.
Yes. Related diversification is when you enter a new industry that has some important similarities or connections to your existing business.
Okay, like what?
Think Lululemon buying Mirror, the home fitness tech company.
Okay, clothes and fitness tech. Different but related how?
Both are in that broader health and wellness space. They target similar customers, can leverage the Lulu brand.
Ah, I see. Or Honda. They started with motorcycles.
Right. Then cars, lawnmowers, boat engines.
All leveraging their skill in making engines, right? That's the connection.
Exactly. Leveraging a core competency, something you do really well that's hard to copy across different but related areas.
Like Disney's skill in characters and storytelling. Made buying Pixar a natural fit, enhanced what they already did.
Perfect example of related diversification strengthening the core. And sometimes the relatedness is more subtle, like Logan Paul.
The YouTuber.
Yeah, he does YouTube, podcasting, wrestling, the prime drink.
Seems kind of all over the place.
But it's all connected through his personal brand, his audience engagement, his marketing ability. It's diversification related to him as the core asset.
Huh. That's actually a really interesting way to frame it. Okay, so related diversification makes sense if you can leverage something, but then unrelated diversification.
Yeah, this is entering industries with no clear connection to what you already do.
Sounds way riskier.
It generally is. The classic example, though it's old now, is Coca-Cola buying Columbia Pictures.
Soft drinks in movies?
Yeah.
Zero overlap, right?
Pretty much. Now, Coke actually sold it later for a profit, but success stories like that in unrelated diversification are, well, they're not the norm.
What usually happens.
More often you see things like Harley-Davidson trying to sell bottled water.
Harley water. Seriously.
Yep. Or Starbucks trying to sell furniture for a while. The brand just didn't stretch.
Yeah, I can see that. The chapter mentions Zippo lighters trying to branch out.
Right. Into lanterns, hand warmers, tools. Trying to leverage that rugged, durable, American-made image.
Does that really work for, like, a measuring tape? Does the Zippo brand mean anything there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's the core challenge of unrelated diversification. The argument for it is usually about reducing overall company risk. If one industry tanks, maybe another unrelated one does well.
Spreading the bets.
Kind of. But in practice, it's really hard for managers to actually add value to businesses they don't deeply understand. Real synergies are rare. You end up spreading yourself too thin. Remember that movie In Good Company?
Vaguely. Dennis Quaid, Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. The fictional conglomerate Globodine owned a sports magazine, cereal, cell phones, and the whole plot revolved around the absurd attempts to create synergy between them.
Right. It was kind of a satire of that corporate thinking.
Exactly. So the general wisdom in strategy often leans against straying too far from your core competencies.
Okay, this raises a huge question then. Should big companies ever really do unrelated diversification? I mean, isn't it better for investors just to diversify their own portfolios if they want exposure to different sectors?
That is the debate, isn't it? It gets pretty heated in strategy circles. On one side, the company might argue, look, this smooths out our earnings, makes us less vulnerable to a downturn in our main industry.
Provides stability for the company itself.
And maybe, some executives see it as building a bigger empire, more influence. However...
Wait a second, hold on. Is that guy across the street, is he actually taking that package off Mrs. Henderson's porch? Seriously.
What? No way.
Oh my gosh, you just picked it up. You're just walking away with it. Okay, gotta call the police. Hang on. Sound of dialing. Hi, yes, I'd like to report a theft in progress. Oh, yeah, literally right now. Okay, 12 Maple Drive. Yeah, gray hoodie, jeans. Just walk south. Okay, thanks, bye. Hangs up. Okay, wow, they're sending a car. Sorry about that. That was completely nuts.
Wow. Well, that's certainly a dose of reality interrupting our strategy talk. Talk about unpredictable events.
Right. Okay, where were we? Unrelated diversification, the big debate.
Right. So while the company might say it's reducing its risk, Many experts argue that's not the company's job.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. As an investor, I can buy stock in a car company and a tech company and a food company if I want diversification. I don't need some giant conglomerate trying to juggle all that, probably badly.
Why should the company do my diversification for me? Especially when they likely lack the expertise in those other fields.
It feels like corporate overreach. Do the people running, I don't know, a mining company really know how to run a chain of hotels effectively? Come on. It seems like executive hubris more than sound strategy sometimes.
And the market often agrees. There's often a diversification discount.
Meaning what?
Meaning the stock market tends to value focused companies more highly than these sprawling, unrelated conglomerates. Investors seem skeptical too.
They don't buy the synergy story.
Often not. There's a real danger that management just gets spread too thin, makes bad calls in areas they don't understand, and actually destroys value.
Okay. I'm convinced. Sticking closer to home, strategically speaking, seems way smarter most of the time. But what if things go south? What if a company needs to shrink?
Good question. That takes us to strategies for getting smaller. Sometimes contraction is the smartest strategic move. The first approach is retrenchment.
Retrenchment,
Yeah.
like pulling back in trench warfare.
Kind of, yeah. It's about shrinking one or more business units.
Right.
Usually involves cost cutting, maybe layoffs, closing some locations, becoming leaner.
We've seen tons of that, right? Like Coca-Cola dropping hundreds of underperforming drink brands.
Exactly. Focusing on the winners. Or Pick and Pay, having layoffs. Dine Equity closing struggling Applebee's and IHOP locations.
Baby stores closing all their physical shops and going online only. That was a big retrenchment.
Walgreens closing stores too. It's all about trying to improve efficiency when parts of the business aren't working.
Okay, so retrenchment is like trimming the fat. What's restructuring? Sounds more drastic.
It usually involves bigger, bolder moves, more fundamental changes. One key type is divestment.
Selling off a chunk of the company.
Exactly. Selling a business unit or division to another company. We mentioned Ford selling Hertz. Newell Rubbermaid sold its hardware business to focus on consumer goods.
Brown-Forman selling off cheaper liquor brands to focus on the premium stuff.
All examples of strategically shedding assets that don't fit the core focus anymore.
Okay. What about a spin-off? How's that different from selling?
In a spin-off, you create a new independent company from a part of the existing business.
So it's not sold, it becomes its own thing.
Right. And the shares of this new company are given to the original company's shareholders. ConocoPhillips spun off its refining operations into Phillips 66. Sears spun off Land's End.
Why do that?
It can unlock value. The separate companies can focus better, maybe attract different investors who like that specific business. Sometimes the market values the two separate pieces more than the combined whole.
Interesting. And then the really drastic one. Liquidation.
Yeah, that's basically shutting down parts or all of the company and selling off the assets, often at a loss.
When does that happen?
Usually when a business is in deep trouble, facing bankruptcy, and there aren't really any buyers or good options left. GM getting rid of brands like Geo, Saturn, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, that was essentially liquidating those lines.
And Borders bookstores just shutting down completely.
That's a prime example of liquidation, that diversification discount we talked about.
Yeah.
That can actually push companies towards restructuring, divestments, spin-offs to try and get rid of that discount by becoming more focused. Fortune Brands did that years ago, splitting into spirits, home goods, and golf equipment companies.
Trying to make the value clearer for investors.
Okay.
Makes sense. So all these choices, focus, expand, shrink. How do big companies manage all this, especially if they're diversified?
That's where portfolio planning comes in. It's basically a set of tools to help executives manage a collection of different businesses.
Like a financial portfolio, but with business units.
Exactly. Helps them decide where to allocate resources, which businesses to grow, which to just maintain, which to get rid of. The Boston Consulting Group matrix, the BCG matrix, is probably the most famous tool for this.
Ah, yes, the BCG matrix. With the cows and dogs and stars.
Right. It plots each business based on its market share relative to competitors and the growth rate of its industry.
So cash cows are high share, low growth, milking them for money.
Pretty much. They generate lots of cash. Dogs are low share, low growth, maybe candidates to be sold or liquidated.
Ouch, tough label.
Stars are high share, high growth the future, need investment. And question marks are low share, but in high growth markets. Big decision point. Invest heavily to make them stars or cut them loose.
Seems like a neat way to visualize things. But the chapter mentioned it has downsides.
It definitely has limitations. For one, it's maybe too simple. Boiling a complex business down to just market share and industry growth ignores a lot of other factors: competition, tech changes, regulations.
Sure.
Plus, imagine working in a unit labeled a dog. Not exactly motivating, is it?
Yeah, morale killer.
And maybe the biggest issue. It mainly looks at your current businesses. It doesn't really help you spot totally new opportunities or think outside your existing portfolio box.
Okay, so useful, but not the whole picture. All right, let's try to wrap up our short takes on strategy from Chapter 8. We covered a lot.
We did. We started with those concentration strategies, really focusing via market penetration, market development, product development.
Then moving along the value chain with vertical integration, backward towards suppliers, forward towards customers.
Then the big leap into diversification. Related diversification, leveraging existing strengths.
Which generally seems like the better bet,
And unrelated diversification, which is much trickier and often debated.
including our little real-time debate earlier.
Huh. Yes. And then strategies for getting smaller. Retrenchment, restructuring through divestment or spin-offs, and liquidation.
And finally, using portfolio planning like the BCG matrix to try and manage it all, despite its limits.
A whirlwind tour of corporate strategy choices.
Definitely. So as you, the listener, reflect on all this, here's maybe a final thought to chew on, building on our debate.
Given that track record, all the risks we discussed, is chasing unrelated diversification really about smart strategy for shareholders? Or is it sometimes more about maybe executive ambition, building bigger empires?
Ooh, provocative. And what does that imply for how you might think about diversification, whether it's in your own career path or your investments?
Good question. Lots to think about there.
Absolutely. If you want to dive deeper, definitely check out Chapter 8 of Ketchen and Short's Mastering Strategic Management. Think about the companies you see every day. How do these frameworks apply? We'd love to hear your thoughts or questions too.